Allie. Join me as I teach you crawl stitch. If you struggle with cubic right angle weave, this Fiesta Earring video is for you. Not only are we going to be learning how to do crawl stitch, we're going to show how to add some simple fringe and also how to do some very basic wire working. So make sure you watch the whole way to see all of those little steps. If you ever need any materials, look below the video. In the description, there is a link to get to our site where we'll put all the pertinent information, including the exact supplies that are used in this video. Gather everything up and your bead on a board and let's get ready to get started. So to start the Fiesta earrings, we are going to be doing cubic right angle weave or raw stitch. The cubic right angle weave refers to a three-dimensional beading that is a series of right angle weave units that are positioned together both side by side and stacked one on top of another. The example piece here has a galvanized champagne color. We're going to be doing it in two different colors like our sample piece in this guava and squash. We're using two different colors so we can keep track of the raw stitch and learn it better. If you do not know raw, I would recommend learning raw stitch before advancing to crawl. If you want to figure that out, go ahead and look below the video. There's going to be a link there, and scroll down to the bottom of that page on the link and we'll put other examples there for you to be able to start some raw and some crawl stitch. If you've never done it before though, buckle up, we're about to get to it and you'll hopefully pick it up just fine. The first thing I have on is a stop bead. This bead is going to come off of my thread and needle, and I have it on a size 10 needle with some green size 8 dragon thread. About 4 feet is what I have on my needle and thread. You would, if you are doing this sample piece here, I would recommend using our gold thread. It'll blend nicely. It's easier to see the green while we're teaching, so we're using that for teaching purposes. We're going to build our crawl stitch here, and then we are going to advance to adding the fringe, and then we're going to do some wire working, so make sure to watch the whole video. We are going to start off here with an AB pattern. Our first bead is going to be our squash bead, and our second bead is going to be our guava. We're going to do another set of that. So we have 4 beads on to do our first raw or right angle weave unit. We're going to push those beads down to the stop bead and sew through beads number 1, 2, and 3, going from the stop bead toward bead number 4 and exiting through bead number 3. That's going to establish our first right angle unit. This first right angle unit is a series of right angles in the corner of all 4 beads. You want to make sure that your thread and needle is coming out the right hand side of that squash orange bead that's on this side. From here, we're going to build 3 more units, and then we're going to build a 4th unit, 2 more units, and then our 4th unit, we're going to bring it together to make it into a circle, almost a tiny little ring. From there, we're going to build up. So we want to get 2 more units on here. When you're doing right angle weave, every other stitch, your thread is going to be coming out the bottom or the top and alternating, but always coming out the right hand bead. We're going to do the opposite pattern always, so if you're coming out of a squash, grab a pink one, grab your squash, grab another pink. We need 3 more beads to make our next right angle unit. Our thread is currently coming out the right side of our first raw box. We added 3 more beads and we're going to sew into the top of that right side from the first box. Magically, when we sew into the opposite side of that right bead, we get it as the left bead of the new unit. You're going to sew over then through bead number 1 that you added and bead number 2. I always consider this the 3rd bead because bead number 1 is the bead you're coming out of. That is our second right angle unit. So when you're looking at it here, you have your first right angle unit, which has that empty, and your second. You can now see that you have an established line of your pink beads here on the bottom and your orange beads on the side. We're going to keep going with that theme. I'm coming out the top now of my rightmost bead from that second unit. Add a pink, add an orange, add a pink. What you want to do is sew into the opposite side again of the rightmost bead on that previous unit. And once again, magically, it becomes bead number 1 and the left side of the new unit. I'm going to sew over to the right hand side here of this raw unit. Once you've got that established, we're going to do one more unit. So we now have unit number 1, unit number 2, and unit number 3. We need a 4th unit. The 4th unit, we're going to utilize the bead next to the stop bead, that bead number 1 that you put on, and we're going to use the bead that our thread is currently coming out of, and make one more unit that is going to pull them into a circular or almost a ring shape. Pick up a pink bead, which is going to be the bottom of your next unit, unit number 4. Instead of picking up a bead that would be the right side, we're going to go back to our first unit, and we're going to sew up through bead number 1. We now need a top for this right angle unit. We're going to add one more pink bead, and then we're going to go down and sew through the bead our thread is currently coming out of, which is going to be the rightmost hand side of our already established raw units. Now you can see I have not pulled this tight because I want to be able to show it to you, because once you pull it tight it gets a little bit difficult to look at. You have your first, second, and third unit. Our 4th unit is being built to connect units 1 and 3. We've added one bead here at the bottom. The bead number 1 is the one our thread is coming out of. Bead number 2. For bead number 3 of our raw unit, we've gone up through the left side of that unit. We've added a 4th bead, and now watch, we're going to pull that closed. When we pull that closed, it looks like a mess. It looks like a little molecule. You want to remember, pink's at the bottom, pink is at the top, orange is on the side. So at the top, when you look at it from a bird's eye view, you should see 4 pink beads. When you look at it from the bird's eye view from the bottom, next to the stop bead, you should see again 4 pink beads. So it's hard to kind of keep track of it if you do it all in the same color. So if you've never done crawl stitch before, I would recommend 2 drastically different colors like this pink and orange, so you can see one color at the top and one color at the sides. Our pink bead is always going to be what we're going to call the base or the bottom or the floor, and then the top or the roof is always also going to be pink. Our walls of our little high rise that we're going to create are always going to be the orange beads. So as we progress and build more floors onto this high rise, we are going to go in and we are going to build more floors utilizing and stepping on top of the raw unit from before. So we're going to call this level 1 or floor 1. We're going to build floor 2. We've decided, hey, let's go up. We've got more people. We're going to build floor 2 on top of floor number 1. So what was the ceiling for floor number 1 is now going to become the floor for, or the bottom of floor number 2. So what is going to happen is, instead of sharing the walls, we are going to share the top and the bottom when it comes to crawl stitch. Our thread is currently coming out toward the bottom of one of our wall beads, that orange bead. So I'm going to sew around through the raw stitch, through the bottom. And normally we sew through, so we're coming out the right hand side. This time what we're going to do is we're going to sew through, so we're coming out through the top. So you're going to come out and make sure that your thread is coming out of one of those pink beads here. Again, you can see me pinching it, but all 4 of the pink beads are to the top. If you have trouble holding it, you can also put it around something like a mandrel or something like that to establish and keep that space. I like to hold it and do the pinch method. It gets much easier after you go on and have 3 floors into your hotel here. So once your high rise has 3 floors, it's easy to know where you are. Getting from floor number 1 and building floor number 2, that's the trickiest. And I'm going to show you how to build on top of these floors. We're now going to start building our second floor to our high rise here. The first thing we need to do is build wall number 1. So we're going to build wall number 1 here over wall number 1 from floor 1. We're coming out of the top of that right angle unit from the first floor, and we're going to add the right wall, we're going to add the new ceiling, and we're going to add the left wall. sewing back through that bead that your thread is currently coming out of, that top bead. We're going to bring this into a right angle section. So see that right angle wall kind of sitting right there? The pink to the bottom, that's the one we shared. The pink to the top is a new one, and the orange is our walls. We're going to hold it now to the side, and what we're going to do is go in to build our next unit. We need to come out of, again, the right-hand side of the raw unit we just completed. So we're coming out that orange bead. Once we're out the orange bead, we are going to rotate it in our hand because we're going to build our second wall. Now our second wall is going to use the right side of wall number 1 as a support. So we're going to kind of spin it here. Our thread's coming out the right side of that wall 1, coming out towards the top. We're going to do our next unit, adding a pink bead, sealing for the top. We're going to add another one of our orange beads, wall for the right, and we're going to catch onto the pink bead from the first unit on wall number 2 of row 1. Pulling that through, we're just building another right angle unit. We're then going to go back through the orange bead that our thread was originally coming out of. And now we need to get over again to the rightmost bead of this raw unit. We're going to sew through the top bead. We're going to then sew through the rightmost bead, which is going to be that right wall. So we now have 2 walls to floor number 2. We have our first wall and our second wall. We're going to spin it around a little bit. We need to get our third wall. So to get our third wall built in here, we're coming out of the orange. We're going to look for our pink that's standing up here. Kind of pull those out if you need to. There's our last one, that's pink number 4. Here's our pink one right here. It's just wanted to fold down a little bit. And from here, we're going to go through our pink bead right there. And we're going to get ready to build our next wall here. So I was coming out the bottom of the right hand bead from the second raw unit on floor 2 that we just built, the second wall. And I've gone through, because my thread was coming out the bottom, and gone through and added my second bead to the raw unit, which is the top of bead, or top of the first floor bead, that pink one. I'm going to add another orange and another pink, and you can see I put a mandrel or an awl in here so that way you guys could see it a little bit easier and see that segment. From here I have another wall and another ceiling, and I'm going to do my complete this right angle unit, going down through the left bead, the bead that my thread was originally coming out of. That forms that next little right angle unit. See that next unit here, pink at the top, pink at the bottom, orange on the left, orange on the right. Our thread is currently out the orange on the left. We need to get it over the whole way to the orange on the right. So we're going to go through and take our needle through the pink, and normally I would totally turn this in my hand as I'm working on it, but I'm keeping that front view for you. And remember, I said by the time we get to floor 3 we're pros and we know exactly how to add on and build more floors on our hotel here. I'm coming out once again that right bead on that right angle unit that I just completed. Here's where I'm coming out the top, and as you turn you can see, hey look, I already have my bottom for my 4th wall, which was from floor number 1. It's now the bottom of floor number 2. I have my right side from that first wall that we built. I have my left side from this last wall that we built. And as we build the 4th wall on the 2nd story, all we need is a ceiling. So we're going to add 1 pink bead, go down through the right hand side, because our thread's there at the top, go through the bottom, like we normally do, go out through a side bead here, and instead of working our thread all the way over to the right side, what we're going to do instead is get our thread to come out one of those top 4 pink beads. So we come out the pink bead right along the top. And just like that, it's hard to see, but you have created your second floor. So you're doing the second floor of the beads. See the orange bead on the left, orange bead on the right, top bead, bottom bead. If I take this off here, see those four pink beads there, right there at the top? Those four pink beads, which are the ceiling of floor number 2, now we're going to become the floor of the base, I should say, of floor number 3. So coming out, I'm going to do this quickly once again that you have in here. So I have the floor, I need a right wall, I need a new ceiling, and I need a left wall. I'm going to go back through that now floor bead and create my first right angle unit. That first wall there is ready to go for my third floor. The third floor though, I need to get out just like all good right angle weave, come out to the right hand side, right angle, come out the right bead. It's an easy way to remember it, right and right. And now I'm going to turn to build wall number 2. My thread's coming out towards the top here. I can see my pink bead established, I can see my orange bead established there. I need a new top because my thread's coming out at the top, so there's going to be my new top of that one, and here's the right side of wall number 2. Go up through the bead your thread was currently coming out of, and once again take your needle and thread through the top and down through the right hand side of wall number 2. Always coming out the right hand side of the right angle unit. From here we need to do the third wall, so we're just going to swing it around a little bit, and we're going to go in and we are going to connect to the bottom here because our thread's coming out the bottom. We're going to go through the pink bead that was the top of row number 2 is now the bottom of row number 3. We're going to add our right wall, and we need to add a ceiling. Go back down now through what is the left wall. And once again, we want our thread coming out the right wall. So we're going to go through the pink bead at the bottom to retrace our thread. And we're going to come out the orange wall bead. As you see here then, and you give it a turn, look, you've got your pink base bead there. My thread's coming out, the bead that's on the left. And all I need for my fourth bead to create that right unit is one ceiling bead. Go down the bead on the right here. And tuck that over. Across the bottom bead, sewing through the bottom. Up through the bead on the left. This is stepping up then, and you want to come out the top. See how those 4 beads now sit really well? Remember what I said, that by the time you get to floor number 3, everything gets really established. So now when I turn to it, here is first floor, second floor, third floor. First floor, opening, second floor, opening, third floor, opening. You can see the right beads are going to run lateral, and the yellow beads are going to run horizontal. I'm going to keep building my right angle units, one on top of the other, and building on to the hotel floors. As you progress in your crawl stitch, you really start to see those floors taking place, and you can count your rows of your raw stitch by your horizontal beads. So I can count either the empty holes that I have here in the middle between the pinks, or you can turn to the side and I can count and say my orange beads in my row, floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, floor 4, 5, 6, 7. I just completed my 7th row, or my 7th floor of my little high rise here. And I want to go to a total of 14. That being said, you can stop at any time or you can keep going. So if you just want a little section here and you want to bring some wire up in a triangle and just have these at the bottom, you can stop at 7. If you want to, you can continue on to 14, or you can even go longer and go for a necklace. This is building the foundation of learning crawl stitch. Once you have 14 rows, we are going to go in and do some really quick and simple and very, very easy, you just have to follow a line, embellishment along the bottom. After completing 14 units, we are going to add in our fringe at the bottom. Now you can do this any way you want, but we're going to do it very, very simple. So I have my 14 units, and how I counted that was my orange beads, the beads that are facing on the side, or you can count those empty holes. But it's easiest to go in here and say, all right, how many orange beads, and count down the row. There are 14, and we are going to be adding a total of 7 beads on our fringe. If you want to go longer, you can certainly do so. Coming out of the top, it looks like I'm ready to add a whole nother unit. But guess what? We're not going to add another unit to our stitch. What we're going to do instead is come down and just run down the orange beads. So I'm going to take my thread and needle out of the pink, and we are going to go into the orange. Coming into the orange then, the first thing we're going to do is add one of our fringe pieces. And we're going to mimic the sample piece, adding an 11-0, a pink crystal, and an 11-0 here. Let that drop down to the base of that crawl stitch. Take your needle and thread, skip over the last 11-0, go back through the 4mm bead and the 11-0, and then down through the next orange bead along this line. We're just going to be following that orange line that we just counted to 14. When you pull that through, you want to make sure you don't see a lot of extra thread showing. I like to hold the bottom bead there, kind of push everything up, and then do a little pull. Next, we're going to just add an 11-0. Sew into the next orange bead. Next, we're going to add an orange crystal. 11, hyacinth, 11. So this is going to repeat the whole way along those 14 sections here. Going in, sewing through then the next orange bead. Making sure you don't have any extra thread showing. After your crystal, 1 11-0. Then you do your next crystal. Our next crystal in line is going to be a pattern of yellow, then pink, and then reverse it, yellow, orange, pink. The whole way down that central line of our orange 11-0s that we're currently following. When you get to the end of the crawl stitch, adding in all your fringe, you're going to be coming out of the last orange bead on the starter side, right near your stop bead. So what we're going to do is very simply sew over and tie the two ends together. Then we're going to break and do a little bit of a wire working lesson showing how you can make your own form and your own earring out of wire. So here when you get to the end, however long you want it to be, again this is a really fun necklace you can do fringe off of too. You're going to be coming out of that orange bead there. I'm going to work through my project, going through the crawl stitch, making sure I don't see any extra thread. So I'm up the pink, I need to go down through that orange, over to that pink. So you can see I'm just retracing it, over to the orange. And then guess what? I'm at the spot where my stop bead is. So you're just going to simply remove that starter or that stop bead. And I'm going to tie these two ends together. Right over left, left over right. It becomes very easy to do so. And again, if you're using the golden yellow thread, it's going to really disappear into your project. I did a couple overhand knots there. And then I'm going to take my needle and thread through the next stitch, which is going to separate out my threads to one side and the other side. So it's separating them out and getting my thread ends away from the knot, which is already going to be visible. I take my wire, or my thread burner there, burn down my thread ends on both sides, burn them in flat towards the project. And now we get to do a little bit of wire working to hang our section of our Fiesta earring. Now what we're going to do is make our wire form. So I did this one a little bit more of a fan. This one here I did a little bit more of a teardrop. So I have my wire, which is going to be a 20 gauge Potomac dead soft round wire. That's going to be great for our ear wires as well. That's one of the reasons I've chosen that size. And we have the wire here. The first thing I'm going to do is make that primary bend, which is going to be about 45-degree angle there. So I'm going to take my wire towards the middle actually, and I'm going to make that 45-degree angle. That is going to stop my piece of CRAW from coming off the end. And see how we're going to end up actually curving that. Take your CRAW piece into the end here where you see those 4 beads, and you're literally just going to wiggle it through. If it pops out of there, especially if you're using like an 8/0 seed bead, push it back on in. From here, we're going to bend the other side. And you have to decide what shape you want. So you can see I have kind of that half moon shape. So I'm just going to bend my wire into that half moon shape. And the wire is very forgiving. I'm going to go to this other side here, and I'm going to also bend it in. That's getting my half moon shape here. If I wanted a teardrop, I would just continue it up and not do the bend. I'm going to go to the middle of the piece and bend the wire up. Taking the secondary piece of wire then that's crossing over the front, take your hands, your pliers, and just wrap it around one time. Grab a cutter, cut that wire close. Go ahead and bend in that wire that's sitting there. You want to pinch that in with your needle nose or chain nose pliers. Make sure one form looks like the other. Good to go. Drop down onto this, and this can be kind of the most annoying part, is getting that little tail in. Just have to learn how to come on it from one angle. From here, grab your 4mm bead just to add a little bit of color to the top, and then we're going to create our own ear wire based on the wire here. If you want to put it on something else, you can certainly do an eye pin. We have other videos showing how to do that. But all I'm going to do is bend that wire right after the crystal with my hands, again about a 45-degree angle. This one, I think I bent around a pen, or you can also bend them around some beading awls. This one actually might have gone around an awl, so we'll go the awl route. And the wire's going towards the front. I'm taking the awl or my rounded form, a pen, anything like that, and I'm bending the wire over top of that rounded form to get my ear wire. From here, it's up to you how long that ear wire along the back is. I'm going to make them match from one to the other. Going ahead and cutting that down, taking my needle nose pliers here, and I'm going to bend that little section up. The reason we bend that little section up is because it prevents it from coming out of your ear. That simple little wire working combined with the crawl stitch gives the Fiesta earrings a really awesome, really individual look. The weight of the CRAW will keep those down if you're doing different sizes. You can also do this around a form, but it's a little bit more difficult to hang on to. And hopefully this cleared up and taught a lot of you how to accomplish and conquer CRAW. Thanks so much for joining me as we create these fun Fiesta earrings. Remember, you can do them at any length. You can do any sort of fringe that you want. You can even make it into a necklace or a bracelet. I find that the earrings are a great way to learn and to actually accomplish the task of saying, I know crawl stitch, because you're doing one and then you're doing the next one. It's also a fun little hit on wire working too. So if you have any suggestions or any comments that you want to leave, do so below the video. Remember, if you haven't yet, subscribe by hitting that little subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at PotomacBeads. Thanks so much for learning crawl with me, and hopefully this video inspired you to create and design on your own. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.